Terry Bradshaw doesn't want the Steelers to sign Aaron Rodgers and thinks the organization failed Kenny Pickett. Big Deke news. I'm sorry. More Aaron Rodgers stuff. Steeler legend Terry Bradshaw is making headlines, giving his take on the Steelers' pursuit of Aaron Rodgers. He's not thrilled about it. And also, he's talking some Kenny Pickett. Last week, we reacted to Big Ben talking about KP8 and his new home in Cleveland and his thoughts on whether or not Kenny was going to get booed whenever he first visited the Steelers in week 6. Yeah, his return to Heinz Field. Big Ben wondered if he was going to get booed. I said, yeah, he's going to get booed. Trust me, he's definitely going to get booed. We got another Steeler legend quarterback giving his thoughts about Kenny Pickett. This was all in the same interview. Bradshaw talked about Aaron Rodgers, talked about Kenny Pickett. So you got to figure. It's May 28th, man. Not much is going on. I get OTAs and everything, but these are the most relevant topics. These are the best things to react to for today's show. Sitting here again, May 28th, still a couple months away from training camp, 3 months away from preseason and regular season and all that. I think this is the best we got. Terry Bradshaw giving his thoughts about the Steelers' pursuit of Aaron Rodgers, and Terry Bradshaw talking about Kenny Pickett and whether or not the Steelers mismanaged that. So let's start with Aaron Rodgers. Bradshaw put the organization on blast. He's not happy with how his former team's operating and how they've handled the quarterback situation this offseason, to say the least. Here's what he said. He went on, I don't even know what radio show this is. Hold on. It's in the description here. No, wrong topic. That may be for if we have time at the end of the show. But our main focus is Bradshaw talking Rodgers, Bradshaw talking Pickett. So hold on. Let me see. This should be it right here. As you could read, the headline, the caption. Terry Bradshaw thinks Steelers' interest in QB Rodgers is a joke. Article done by Brooke Pryor starts off by saying Terry Bradshaw isn't a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers' prolonged pursuit of Aaron Rodgers. The 4-time Super Bowl champion winning Steelers quarterback didn't hold back in his assessment of the seemingly never-ending flirtation between Rodgers and Bradshaw's former team. In a radio interview with 1037 The Buzz, yes, this is where he did the interview, in Arkansas, of all places. I don't know. This just came out of nowhere. Bradshaw is doing a local radio hit down in Arkansas on Tuesday. Bradshaw lambasted the Steelers for their interest in signing the 41-year-old. It's a joke. That, to me, is just a joke. What are you going to do? Bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? That guy needs to stay in California. Go somewhere. Chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there. Also had an additional comment when asked, or I think it was one of the radio hosts commented and said, like, listen, basically, I get what you're saying here, Terry, but it does still look like the Steelers and Rodgers are going to be a marriage here, that it is still going to happen. It's still very likely to happen. And Bradshaw said, I heard the same thing, Dan. I just don't want it. So, my thoughts. It's not much different. I mean, my thoughts are my thoughts on the Rodgers situation. Bradshaw saying this really doesn't change it for me. But his sentiments, his underlying feelings toward this, I think it's a little extreme right now, because Bradshaw isn't the only one who's gone on record and has made it seem like the Steelers' pursuit of Rodgers is this complete act of desperation, and the Steelers look embarrassed by waiting on Aaron Rodgers, that it's just absolute desperation, and it's absolutely like a joke how the Steelers are looking right now waiting on Aaron Rodgers. Like, Bradshaw's not the only one that is saying this. I think it just hits a little bit more harder because it is coming from Terry Bradshaw, Steelers legend, 4-time Super Bowl champion, all that. But there's been multiple people on ESPN, analysts, national media, saying, like, the Steelers, What happened, man? Once a one-storied franchiser sitting here waiting on a 41-year-old who we don't know if he's completely washed up anymore, and Aaron Rodgers, and a guy that goes to franchises and has drama. Like, what are the Steelers doing waiting on this guy? This is the Pittsburgh Steelers we're talking about. How the mighty have fallen. Like, that's kind of the vibes. That's kind of the underlying sentiment coming from Bradshaw's comments and others when critiquing the Steelers and how they've handled the quarterback position this offseason, right? To me, I don't think the Steelers are desperate at all right now. I don't think they're embarrassing themselves. I think actually they're doing good business. It's just good business all around. You get a chance to have Aaron Rodgers on your team for $10 million. He said that on McAfee. Now, does he ultimately sign for $10 million? That remains to be seen. But he said, I'll play for $10 million this year. It ain't about the money. I don't need a multi-year deal. I'll sign for 1 year, $10 million. It's just going to all depend on whether or not I really want to play football and if the fit's right. But we all know at this point, the only fit is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if he plays here and signs for around what he was saying on McAfee, 1 year, $10 million, that's good business for the Steelers. I don't think you're getting much better than that when talking about all their other quarterback options this offseason. So, yeah, it involves a little bit of waiting, a little bit of patience maybe. We got our backup plan in Mason Rudolph, and we talked about that, how Mason Rudolph at $4 million or $3.5 million this year. It's a 2-year deal for, I think, $7 million total. Mason Rudolph for $3.5 million this year as our backup plan. That is if Rodgers doesn't sign here. Could very well also be a better option than signing Sam Darnold for what he got in Seattle, bringing back Fields for what he got with the Jets, bringing back Russ, going out of our way to get Danny Dimes. Any of those other options, you compare Mason Rudolph being here. I mean, you could say Mason Rudolph is the better play at $3.5 million. Obviously, he's got to prove it over 17 games, but there's question marks about all those other guys that I talked about too, right? I've been over that. I've talked about this scenario a couple times over the last several shows. But that's our backup plan. That's our backup plan. Our backup plan may be better than all those other so-called top options that many were talking about this offseason for the Steelers. And Fields, Darnold, Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones. I don't want to say trading for Stafford because that just didn't happen. Flat out, the trading for Stafford thing didn't happen. But you think about it, you would have had to give up a premium for Stafford, also pay him decent amount of money. Now, is Stafford worth it? You could definitely make that case. But still, Mason Rudolph for $3.5 million. I think the Steelers, they did a good thing there with that signing. Backup plan to Aaron Rodgers. We got the insurance. But it's not hurting you at all. So, like, you have that already in place with Mason. It's not hurting you at all to wait for Rodgers for a little bit. How's it hurting the Steelers? How are they desperate in this situation right now? Rodgers is missing 2 days of voluntary OTAs. Aaron Rodgers. And again, if he signs here, you're getting him for $10 million. 1 year for $10 million, around there. Maybe it's 15. Maybe Rodgers asked for a little bit more. Who knows? But if that happens, I feel like that's worth the wait. That's worth the chance. That's worth the swing. Because we talked about for this upcoming season, we brought back Tom. We brought back the coaching staff. I felt like we would need to make some big swings in the personnel department, and particularly at quarterback. We need to get elite quarterback play in here to compete in the AFC with these other top QBs in the conference. And getting Rodgers for a year, $10 million, that's a worthwhile swing. The likelihood of it being a home run, I don't know what those percentages are, but it's worth the chance, man. I think that's a better opportunity to get where you want to be at the quarterback position. Signing Rodgers for 1 year, another year removed coming off of this Achilles, even though he is going to be 41. I think that gives you a better chance to get you where you want to be than bringing back Russ, then bringing back Fields, hoping that he develops. Arguably even trading for Stafford. I brought up that scenario. Doing all that to trade for Stafford. Think of that. Would you rather just have Rodgers back or Rodgers here for a year, $10 million, or trade whatever, maybe a second round pick and pay 45 million for Stafford for a few more seasons? Wouldn't you rather just have it be a lot cleaner and sign Rodgers 1 year, $10 million? It don't work out. You completely reset in 2026 with that QB class. I don't think the Steelers are desperate at all. I think it's everyone from the outside are feeling this way. I don't know why. I just think it's good business. I really do. I think the Steelers are handling this offseason actually pretty well. It's annoying. Don't get me wrong. It's annoying waiting for Rodgers. Like we just want an answer, right? Everyone wants an answer in this situation. I don't even think it's just the fans anymore. It's also the media. But even the players, I think the organization wants an answer. It is a little bit annoying. This is something you get with Aaron Rodgers, though. We know that going in. But I really do think it could be worth the wait. And the waiting, the patience being a virtue. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, I think that's something that plays into Aaron Rodgers probably wanted to be here. We're giving him his space. We're letting him take his time. If we wanted to rush it, we said, dude, we need an answer right now. Maybe our chance for Aaron Rodgers is completely out the window like a month ago. Now, some of you would like that. But I don't think it has to be this line in the sand right now. It's May 28th. This saga has gone on for a while. It's gone on longer than I would have liked, but still, we're talking about voluntary OTAs. What's the Iverson quote? Practice. We're talking about practice. The practices he was talking about were mandatory. And like he kind of had a point, right? Practice. We're talking about practice. Look what I do in the game. And those practices were mandatory. With Rodgers, like voluntary OTA. We're talking about voluntary OTAs. We're not even at the mandatory practice, the mandatory minicamp part of this offseason just yet. What's the point? Where do we draw a line in the sand? I've said it a couple of times. At some point in August, you see how Mason's looking. You see how the team's responding to Mason. Mason's looking bad. Yeah, keep the line open till before the regular season starts. Hell, maybe even when the regular season starts. I don't know. But if Mason's looking good, and I would expect Mason to look good. He's not going to choke in the training camp setting or preseason settings or anything like that. I would expect Mason to actually look good. So if all's going well with MR2 and Rodgers still hasn't made his decision, middle of August, teammates are responding to Mason. They feel like he's the guy. He's the one that's out there in the trenches, working hard in training camp, preseason, all that stuff. And teammates are following him. They feel like he's the leader. Then it's at some point in August where you got to draw that line in the sand. We're not there yet, and I don't think it's desperate that we're waiting on Rodgers up to. I don't. It's just good business. I think the Steelers are operating from a good business standpoint right now. Trying our best, giving ourselves a pretty good chance here to win in 2025, but also being very flexible for 2026 and going forward. Now, Bradshaw also had some comments on another quarterback I mentioned at the beginning, Kenny Pickett, former Steelers quarterback. So, yeah, he's not thrilled about the Steelers' potential future with Aaron Rodgers, but he also looked in the past and was like, you know what, man, like, I go back to when they had Kenny Pickett. This is what he's saying. I go back to when they had Kenny Pickett. I feel like they mismanaged that from the start. Like, they wouldn't even be here at this point with Aaron Rodgers if they didn't mess it up so badly with Kenny Pickett. Says Kenny wasn't the failure. Steelers were a failure. Here's the full quote again on the Buzz's Morning Mayhem show. I liked Kenny Pickett. I liked him at Pitt. I know him. I know what he's like. And when they got him to Pittsburgh, here's what they didn't do. They didn't protect him. They didn't get him an offensive line. They wanted to run the football, but they didn't have an offensive line. They couldn't protect. And they didn't have weapons. He had no wide receivers to speak of. And then then you throw a kid in there for 2 years and you got an offense that didn't fit, didn't work. And they can't run because their offensive line is not even good enough for a run blocking scheme, or a run blocking team, rather. And therefore, they say Pickett was a failure. He wasn't a failure. The Steelers were a failure. Wow. Listen, I've been saying things along that line, maybe not as heavy-handed as what Terry went with here and how Kenny was mismanaged or the Steelers did Kenny dirty a little bit. I do feel like part of it was on Kenny too. It feels like how Bradshaw laid it out here. This was all on the Steelers. Kenny didn't help himself at points. Inconsistent play. He got hurt too much. Like, just being available is a part of the game. But I mean, for the most part, or for a good portion of Bradshaw's comments, I agree. And don't take it from me, guys. Look, this is Terry Bradshaw saying this, man. This is Terry. Because you guys already think I'm a KP8 homer. You know, I'm a Pitt homer. I protect Kenny too much. This is from Terry Bradshaw. So, what do you want me to say there? This is a guy that might know a thing or two about the quarterback position, right? And might know a thing or two about being the Steelers quarterback early on in his career and struggling and having the fan base against him and not everything going well, but sticking through and grinding through and then ultimately coming out on top on the other side. Might know a thing. Terry Bradshaw might know a thing or two about that. So if he saw something in Kenny Pickett, and even though everything wasn't perfect, Kenny's first couple of years, I think Terry looked at the game-winning drives and the mental toughness that Kenny showed, despite him having Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator, despite having a subpar offensive line out there, despite getting banged up. Like, for him, for Kenny to get some of those game-winning drives, ultimately have a winning record as a Steelers quarterback those first couple seasons, Bradshaw thought to himself, and I thought to myself, let's give the dude another year at least. Let's see what he could do for a third year with new offensive coordinator, new weapons on offense, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, that didn't happen. We bring in Russ. Kenny's not happy about it. He moves on. But I see what Bradshaw's saying. Whenever you look at the Steelers in 2022, they drafted Pickett in the first round. Whenever you draft a quarterback in the first round, you believe in that guy, right? So you could look at Pickett only having, and not even a full 2 years of starting. It was more like a year and a half, like probably less than a year and a half. And then he only had 1.5 games without Matt Canada. And those were 2 pretty good games. Bengals game, first one in a while that Steelers offense put up over 400 yards. Kenny looked like a completely different person than he did the rest of that, or before in that sophomore year for him in 2023. Every game up to that point, things weren't looking right, all over the place. First 3 quarters, offense pretty stale, and then fourth quarter it'd be Kenny Pickett time, game-winning drive time, and we'd win the game. But that Bengals game on the road, right after we fired Matt Canada, that was a complete game from the offense, complete game from Kenny Pickett. And then he only got a half against the Cardinals, injured his ankle. But we were about to go up. I think it was like 10-3 or 10-7. And fourth down, we try some wacky play after. I digress. That Cardinals game was an absolute disaster. But Kenny was looking good before he got hurt. That's all we got to see from Kenny without Matt Canada. That's it. Because we got to see what Mason could do with an offense without Matt Canada calling the plays. And it was pretty good. We didn't really get to see that from Kenny Pickett. Because there's something to be said for you draft a guy in the first round, you believe in him, you say, man, you know, we want to give you every shot possible. We want to give you every opportunity to prove that you could be the guy. Because we talk about teams failing quarterbacks at a pretty high clip around this league, right? Justin Fields with the Bears, one example. You're seeing it with Caleb Williams already with the Bears. We're saying, oh, man, that coaching staff was terrible for Caleb Williams, this and that, right? So I think it's fair to say, I don't want to say fully Steelers failed Kenny. I think they gave a half attempt, though, in making him the guy. You look at everything that happened those 2 years with Kenny, he still came out with a winning record. Now, I will say this. I don't think the Steelers were completely wrong in how they handled the offseason after 2023 and signing Russ for $1 million and ultimately trading for Justin Fields after Kenny asked out. But I think there is something to be said for having like a long-term vision. You drafted this guy in the first round for a reason. You could honestly say to yourself, have a legit assessment and say, Matt Canada wasn't it. Like, I think that's fair. Everyone could see it. Like, anyone with eyes could see that Matt Canada wasn't fit to be an NFL coordinator. And you gave a rookie, a first-year player, a first-year quarterback, and ultimately whenever he was in his second year, like, you gave a young quarterback Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator. I mean, we saw what it looked like with Big Ben. That was a disaster. I mean, hashtag the sabotage. If you know, you know. So, like, the Steelers could, I mean, you could say to yourself, look at the full context of the situation. Like, man, gave the dude Matt Canada, subpar O-line, not really an explosive offense. We kind of had the handcuffs on him at times and just wanted to be more conservative, predictable play calling. What would it look like a third year with an Arthur Smith and some different weapons on offense and actually trying to surround the dude with some better things? There's something to be said for having that approach as opposed to we're going to bring in Russell Wilson and he's going to have the pole position. It's open competition though. I get it. Like, I don't think anyone should be above competition. I don't. But at the same time, if you say, like, we actually believe in you, we believe in Kenny Pickett, because that's what Omar Khan was saying last offseason, what Tomlin was saying, like, we believe in Kenny Pickett. There's going to be competition, but we do. We're going to give him every opportunity to be successful. Bringing in Russell Wilson and putting him in the pole position, I don't really think that says full faith or that you actually do have belief in the guy. So I see why Kenny wanted out. I mean, was it the smart thing for him to do? I don't think it was from a professional standpoint. I don't think it was best for his career. If he would have been here, would have had a chance for those first 6 weeks to start with Russ getting hurt with that calf injury. I think he should have stuck around and not been as much in his feelings about the situation. But I get why he maybe stopped trusting the Steelers and Tomlin and how they were handling offense and how they were handling the quarterback position and how they were handling him. I get why Kenny felt that. Now he put it in his own hands, tried to put his career in his own hands and requested the trade. And you see how it works out from here. But yeah, I just don't think it was right, man. It wasn't the right fit anymore. It wasn't the right marriage. But I get what Bradshaw's saying here, man. I really do. And you guys could have guessed I would have went with that angle in my reaction to Bradshaw's comments. I think he's right. The Steelers didn't help Kenny Pickett. They kind of did him dirty, but at the same time, Kenny didn't help him. So it just wasn't the right fit anymore. I think there was a distrust between both Kenny and the organization. And, it is what it is. So if, like, you want to combine these Bradshaw comments from Aaron Rodgers, his assessment on the Aaron Rodgers pursuit, and then his thoughts on how the Steelers handle Kenny Pickett, like, you could look at the Steelers quarterback situation over these last 3-4 years and just say, like, ever since Ben retired, and say, what's the plan? What's the vision? What are we doing? Because everyone thought once we got rid of Kenny Pickett, we brought in Russell Wilson. Oh man, we can't get any worse. I mean, if we went 10-7 with Kenny, Mitch, and Mason, now oh man, at least a couple more wins. We're winning a playoff game, going to run. Then we went 10-7 again. Like, come on. And then Ben's last year, we bring in Canada. That was never the right fit. And then hashtag the sabotage. The organization runs Ben out of town, and fans want to blame Seven for the offensive woes and that team's woes in his final season. And we ultimately see, again, it wasn't Seven's fault. And yeah, it's just been a cycle. It's just been this spinning of the tires from an offensive standpoint. Yeah, so it's fair to question, like, should we even be here? Like, why are the Steelers even at this point with trying to get Aaron Rodgers here for a year? Now, in this given offseason, if you're just looking at 2025 in a vacuum, 2025 offseason, I think it is good business. I'll go back to my remarks I said at the beginning of the show. I think it is good business, but you could definitely question, like, why are we even here to begin with? Like, what the hell is going on? What is going on? We were supposed to draft the successor to Big Ben in 2022 with Kenny Pickett. That didn't work out. Why didn't that work out? You know, we just talked about the context of the whole Kenny Pickett era. Why didn't it work out? I mean, it definitely was a Tomlin Steelers organization, Matt Canada, all that type of stuff issue, as much as it was just Kenny Pickett maybe not living up or developing the way that we thought. Like, it took two to tango there. But then we got rid of Kenny Pickett, and we're in the same exact spot with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and still not knowing what the hell's going on at quarterback. And now we got a whole nother year of cycling through and trying something completely new. And then we're supposed to be most likely drafting a quarterback in the first round of 2026. What over the past like 3 or 4 years makes you confident that we know what we're doing? Fair to question. Definitely fair to question. I like that we're taking the chance on Aaron Rodgers, but who's to say this is going to be a locker? This is going to be fixing all of our woes on offense, that this is the solution. Then you could say the same thing for 2026 when it doesn't work out with Aaron Rodgers. Do we have confidence in the Steelers staff, Steelers organization, that we're going to be able to develop a first-round quarterback to be the guy after seeing what happened with Kenny and that whole debacle? What's funny is, though, Bradshaw bringing up, like, the Kenny Pickett story, because I think what he's doing here a little bit is comparing his story as the Steelers quarterback and how he started, because those, as I mentioned, those first 3 or 4 years with Bradshaw weren't pretty. Fans were booing him. He was even the first overall pick, too, so there were high expectations for him, really high expectations. And he kind of fell flat. I mean, taking bad sacks, just turnovers all over the place. Like, he wasn't that good of a quarterback those first 3 or 4 years. But Steelers stuck with him to an extent, and we see how it ended up. Things started to really click. I think it was like, was it middle of year 4 for him or year 5? And then he goes on, 4-time Super Bowl champion. I think multiple Super Bowl MVP? He's got at least one. I know he's got a regular season MVP, an all-timer. That's what he becomes. So he's probably looking at his story, seeing Kenny. It wasn't perfect first couple of years, but he sees something in him, right? He sees the mocks, he sees the clutchness, the game-winning drives. Like, even though it's not perfect, there's something in Kenny that if we give him the right opportunity, things could really flourish for him. And that was only, again, in Kenny's first 2 years. So what could have happened if we gave Kenny that year 3, year 4? But I think, honestly, the more Bradshaw-esque story is Mason Rudolph, really. I think Mason Rudolph, the redemption arc with him would even fit better with in comparison to, like, Bradshaw's tenure as the Steelers quarterback. In terms of being beaten down, in terms of being counted out, everything going wrong for him, and to come out on top and to have some sort of redemption story and, yeah, make things ultimately a positive at the end of it. I think that would be more Mason than anything. Because Kenny, the Pitt connection, the Pitt story and everything, I think there were a lot of people in Pickett's corner to start off, and Pickett being a first-round pick, all that stuff. Whereas Mason, man, down and out, man. Down and out many times. And then when things were the bleakest, we turned to him Christmas 2023 and saves the season, all that stuff. And then even after that, the Steelers move on from Mason. Don't even give him another chance to, like, compete with Kenny or anything like that. Move on. He has to go to the Titans, lackluster season there, and then comes back. And now we're talking about Aaron Rodgers. And if somehow Mason can make it through this offseason, Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign and Mason gets the chance, I feel like that's more of a Bradshaw-esque type of story if Mason can really turn this around and show us something for these 17 games, and who knows, ultimately do some big winning for this organization. I think that would be the better, like, feel-good story as opposed to Kenny Pickett. But either way, I get where Bradshaw's coming from with this, for sure. He says, what's the vision at QB or wide receiver 2? What is Mike Tomlin or Omar doing? Yeah, I mean, I just brought that up. I mean, if you look back at our recent history, particularly at the quarterback position, and then if you look at last year with wide receiver 2, and then going into this year with us trading Pickens, I don't know, man. I don't have an answer. I'm gonna keep saying it's fair to question that. I don't really have an answer. Like, what is the vision? Because I don't know. I don't think any of us know. I think this year, taking a chance on Aaron Rodgers, it's good business. And if it's not Rodgers, having Mason come back, it was the right thing to do for this offseason, given all the options that were available. But that's it. Yeah, I don't agree with him on the Rodgers stuff. I agree with him more on how he felt about Kenny Pickett and Steelers' handling of that. But that's it for today's show. I thought it'd be a good couple things to react to. I'll be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Stay tuned. Stop through. And we'll see what's on deck for then. I obviously brought up the Purdy article. Steelers under fire after Brock Purdy extension. Maybe we'll react to that. Who knows? Maybe there's something more pressing, more topical that comes through between now and then. But I hope you guys enjoy. Stay chilling. Here we go, Steelers, and peace.